Welcome back, Heat Seekers. You want to win in week 9? Sit back, relax, and let's help you get your quarterback situation straightened out for this week with our week 9 quarterback tiers. These guys at this point are must starts all the time, even if they aren't looking great. Patrick Mahomes has been up and down, but he's still producing at a high level for fantasy. Any concerns here?
No, Patrick Mahomes, we haven't seen great things out of. At least, I shouldn't say great. We haven't seen what we've come to expect out of Patrick Mahomes just based on how things are running. But they are playing Green Bay, who you can throw against. That secondary is banged up and just not great right now. And I do think a guy like him could take advantage of it, even if it's to some of his secondary and tertiary and whatever the fourth level of pass catchers would be called, because I don't know the fancy name. So, no, I don't have any huge concerns overall.
The bigger question in the QB1 tier is if Dak is out of another week, is Cooper Rush considerable as a QB1, QB2 in that conversation? What do you think? That's your team. What do you think about him?
I don't think he's to be held up into that level of conversation. I think we're probably going to talk about Mr. Rush later on. So don't rush through this video. Wait to see where we put him. The one that I find more interesting here, honestly, is Jalen Hurts. We finally saw the end of his reign as the 20 or 21 points out of him for a week in fantasy football. It is just one game, and you wouldn't think that the removal of Miles Sanders was that big of a concern. So I think there's probably some other shakeup going on within the philosophy of the coaching staff. And this is a game where they should be able to just run the ball quite a bit against the Chargers, because the Chargers are getting run all over by pretty much everyone this year. Is he going to be a QB1? He certainly has that upside and potential, and I can see it happening. So I do think we should be talking about him there. But seeing him towards the back end of this, I do think makes sense, just given on that pause that we should be giving after last week.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make. So when we make these tiers, when the team comes together and puts their votes down for who's where, this is the order we'd start them. So if you have questions, maybe you have two of these guys, we would start the guy who's closer ahead. So if you had Herbert, Rodgers, we'd say throw Herbert in. Obviously, that's a good problem to have, and either one of them will give you fantasy production at a high level. But in most cases, that's the way that we would start them on a weekly basis when we do these. So just a fun food for thought. That's a very small QB2 tier. Obviously, these guys all should produce at a strong level, but are there any concerns here for you with this week's matchups?
Not really. All of them have decent matchups here. The Raiders are facing the Giants. Matt Ryan, the Falcons are going against New Orleans. Kirk Cousins against Baltimore. Fields against Pittsburgh. And Daniel Jones against the Raiders. If I had to pick one of them that I'm concerned about, it's just Justin Fields. We've had one really fantasy-friendly week from him. Do we really think that it's going to continue? Have they figured it out? And, of course, it looks like Matt Nagy will probably be back and involved in that offense again to see maybe he learned something by watching them without him calling the plays, or it's just really tough to trust Justin Fields, and I do have him in a couple leagues. I just don't feel good about starting him right now. I like Carr, I like Ryan, and I like Cousins better than him. Yeah. Daniel Jones is just tough too, because that Raiders defense has been better than people thought, and they're running on a skeleton crew of pass catchers. So
obviously at this point in the week, the news is Taysom's working through the concussion protocol and should be available. Who knows, after Trevor Siemien slayed the Tampa Bay Beast this weekend, who knows if Taysom gets the job or if it's Trevor's job to lose. We'd assume it would be Taysom, be the starter, but Trevor did fine. He didn't throw the game away, pun intended. And I think it's an interesting situation we have for fantasy predicaments. I think because of that, I would steer clear of New Orleans this week. But how are you feeling about the New Orleans quarterback situation?
I think this is a good spot for both of them. We've seen Taysom in that offense, and we're just going to have to see what they decide to do, if it's just going to revert back to that Taysom Hill type offense, which I think it probably will be, as opposed to what they're more operating with. Jameis is a completely different type of quarterback, and Trevor operated fine within that last week. So I think they're both good in that sort of flex conversation. And I think you guys have a whole bunch of guys that are in different sort of situations at this point in their careers here. Baker's injured, just hasn't been showing well. Same thing with Roethlisberger. While you have some exciting guys like Mike White and Cooper Rush, who, given the circumstances that they were put into, played well for themselves. And Cooper Rush is going to have a better matchup than I think a lot of people think, going against Denver, who is starting to, it seems like we'll know by the time this comes out, but sell their team off for parts. The defense is not what people thought. They've had a whole slew of injuries at linebacker. I can mention that trade-off. And then, their secondary is banged up too. So I'm not saying it's going to be a world beater. If we're talking about really deep league for one quarterbacks or a super flex league, I think he is in consideration. Darnold hasn't been what he was at the start of the year. Jimmy G Still isn't amazing at quarterback, but he's been serviceable here. So
That is ugly. Davis Mills is the only for sure. No, he isn't. Tyrod should be
yeah, I
back
mean,
this week.
they're all contingent on guys in that flex tier, I think. So
Yeah. So steer clear. Obviously, this is what it is. We've got a lot going on here. Obviously, you can trust the QB1s, QB2s you feel good about. Flexes have some dangerous pieces in there. I don't know. What do you make of all this? What do you make of this sleeper tier? And do you feel comfortable with any of them?
clearly, you're not touching them unless the starter above in that flex group is out. So it's like, do you have them already, or are they on waivers? If it's a super flex league, they're probably not on waivers. Someone probably has them on their team. Are you the one that has them? If you have Tyrod and he isn't playing, that you can start Davis Mills. If you don't, you're not rushing out of your way to go get these guys at that point. And none of them have that amazing sort of situation this week that they're running into. Case Keenum's against Cincinnati, who they got thrown on a lot, but it's just a really weird wide receiver group, and they haven't had huge games. PJ Walker has shown well for a former XFL quarterback, and he's got some mobility, and he isn't afraid to throw the ball downfield, but I wouldn't say he's better than Sam Darnold necessarily. And that matchup for Houston is nice against Miami. But at the same time, Davis Mills is not a guy you just really trust.
Yeah, you can't trust him.
I like Tyrod better than him if you have both of them. And if I was in charge of the Texans and I had my druthers and trying to win, I would be starting Tyrod, but we don't even know if he's going to be playing. So it's sort of keep these guys in the back of your mind in case the starter doesn't play.
There you go, people. Smash that like button if you like the content, if you're enjoying what's going on here. If you have questions, drop comments below, drop questions below, Discord, Facebook, all the places I tell you to do. We'll see you guys later.